dream about.
Canaris stuffed it in! Tremendous goal! Gary Gate leaped over the cage and stuffed it in!
Watch the dreams happen.
On the go. It's over! Andy Moe! Princeton has won their first lacrosse championship.
What the NCAA championships have brought for lacrosse is that happiness.
Cornell has won 16-8. Cornell, the NCAA lacrosse champion.
There is nothing more beautiful. It's just a great show of athletic skill, beauty, and grace. And any sports fan will be drawn to it.
Cook still controls. Great effort by Jeff Cook. Cook rolls and he finds third. Cook scores.
You know what makes lacrosse great? I think greater now than ever. These guys who play it, they're there because they love to play the game. It's a good game played by great young men.
Here's Wood with a shot. He scores. Brian Wood scores. It's right backhanded shot and float.
Silver Celebration, a history of the NCAA Division I Lacrosse Championship. It's become the centerpiece of college lacrosse, the national championship. In time, humble beginnings gave way to spectacular growth, with 1995 marking 25 remarkable years.
The timing is just right to have the 25th anniversary, and it's kind of a capstone.
When you hear about the 25th anniversary of the tournament, what I start to feel is that it's starting to get ingrained in America.
It's one of the premier events in all of amateur sport. It is the color and pageantry of intercollegiate athletics.
Over the past 25 years, we've watched the sport from being a minor sport to actually starting to grow into a major sport.
I can remember going to the first, at Hofstra. You start to dream about what could be. It's come a long way. The excitement's there. You're recognized from coast to coast, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of.
It's the big show in lacrosse. This is it. This is the pinnacle. This is it. Doesn't get any better than this, and I hope it stays like this for a long, long time.
It's great for the sport, and you look back and you feel like you've been a part of something, and you've been a part of kind of a growth of the sport. And to see the 25th anniversary kind of culminate at College Park with a beautiful day and, fans filling the seats, it was a special moment.
In 1971, when I was assistant coach at Cornell, when we heard the NCAA was going to have the first championship, it was like a new beginning.
In the beginning, it was Cornell and Maryland, a fitting confrontation between two of the game's more successful teams during the early years of the tournament. Still, one team had a decided advantage.
Maryland came in as the perennial power. Cornell was this, who are these guys from the Ivy League?
I've always been sort of an underdog coach. Cornell University, like all other Ivy League schools, are non-scholarship programs. So we went against a full scholarship program, and I think our players always looked at that, pride of the Ivy League.
Already seen as an underdog, Cornell was forced to use backup goalie Bob Buman when season-long starter Bob Rule was injured earlier in the playoffs.
It's one of those stories that makes sports exciting. It's so unpredictable. Rule gets hurt. He comes in, he wins the first game, and then in the finals at Hofstra. He was a Long Island kid coming back to Long Island playing for the first NCAA title.
You've done all the preparation, for however many years, and now you're on stage. And it's, put up or shut up, I guess, kind of thing. And some days you really put up.
Buman was outstanding, holding the Terps to just 6 goals.
He had 22 saves. He was out of his mind.
But Buman wasn't alone. Attackman Al Rimmer supplied all the scoring Cornell would need.
He found a spot, and he just zipped the ball into the corner 6 times, I guess.
The Big Red jumped out to a decisive 8-3 halftime lead and never looked back. Thanks to clutch performances by Buman and Rimmer, Cornell upset Maryland.
He found his zone, and I found mine at the other end. And that's pretty much the story of the game.
That day, there were 2 champions, Cornell and NCAA lacrosse.
We realized that we were going to be doing something in lacrosse that we probably would reflect back on. Little did we realize 25 years later that that reflection has carried what it's carried. It's a joy to be part of it.
It was a history-making event in that it was the beginning of a 25-year run, which now culminates in the 25th anniversary.
The next year would bring the Virginia Cavaliers their one shining tournament moment, a 13-12 win over Johns Hopkins. For Virginia, it would be its only championship, although they would later appear in 3 more title games. In the tournament's early years, the University of Maryland was a lacrosse power. Head coach Bud Beermore's Terps, led by talented All-American Frank Urso, played for the title 5 of the first 6 years.
To have all that happen for you is just, you know, to be an NCAA champion, it just doesn't get any better.
After winning its first championship in 1973, Maryland was in search of a second 2 years later, thanks to the incredible Urso.
Here was University of Maryland, coached by me. Navy, coached by Dick Slaza, who was a Maryland graduate. So 2 arch rivals of Hopkins playing this championship on Hopkins Field. We thought that was exciting.
The day, however, would ultimately belong to Urso. The powerful junior scored 5 goals to spark the Terrapins' high-energized offense to a then-championship game record 20 goals. In doing so, Maryland became the NCAA's first 2-title university.
I remember Urso, but I don't remember Navy. That's how dominating he was. I've forgotten the other team.
That day, the only team that mattered was Maryland.
I wear this ring. Represents the championship year of '73 and '75. It's a time that hasn't been forgotten. Many people still remember those days with some excellent lacrosse teams for about 10 years.
And they are going to watch undefeated Maryland meet undefeated Cornell for the lacrosse championship, the NCAA championship. Lacrosse is one of the...
A year later, the 1976 title game, again featuring Maryland and Cornell, would serve as one of the tournament's defining moments and perhaps its greatest game.
Here at Brown University, we're ready for the 6th annual NCAA lacrosse championship.
Our team was an attack-oriented team, and we had a bunch of real hard-working midfielders that got the ground balls. Their team was a midfield-oriented team, and it was just like the clash of the Titans.
2 undefeated teams. It was an unbelievable time at Providence, Rhode Island, and it sort of presented a great background. Our players were very tense, very uptight. The Maryland team was extremely loose.
There it is! Frank Urso, one of the game's all-time great players. And how about that? Maryland scores again. A quickie, number 7, Lance Kohler. Puts it in the net for Maryland, and they lead Cornell 3-2. That's the voice of the goalie, and there's the shot attempt. Oh, and again. Maryland scores again. John Lehman, there is concern of the bench.
I know that I was very frightened at the time. The first half, what happened was that we were trying to break it down into a half-field type of game, and Maryland wouldn't allow us. And they got out on the break, so when they got running, they were very dangerous and they were impossible to stop.
Getting possession, and he scores! Second period play, Bert Olson scores. Maryland leads Cornell 7-2.
Before you knew it, the snowball had turned into an avalanche. Over the course of about 6 minutes, they scored 6 goals just like that.
We were walking in the locker room, hearing them tell us that, you know, our day was over.
I think at that point, a coach can make a choice. Is it going to be the Newt Rockne speech, or am I going to let the players figure it out themselves?
Went in and took a piece of chalk. We drew 2 plays on the floor, 2 plays that we wanted to run continually in the 3rd quarter to get back into the game.
Whatever those 2 plays were, Richie Moran certainly had his All-American senior Mike French in mind. French went on to display one of the most dazzling solo efforts in the 25 years of championship play.
I was hurt on the sidelines, and I just couldn't believe the comeback and the Mike French show.
Mike French was a man on a mission, scoring 7 goals to go along with 4 assists.
He realized that he wasn't going to win unless he really took charge of the game. And he certainly did.
The stick Mike had, he looked like a magician with a wand in his hand.
The French show was in full swing, and Cornell took the lead.
15, 16 minutes you haven't played good, smart lacrosse. Let's see when we can't get it back together.
But the Terps were not finished. Their superstar midfielder Frank Urso scored late in the 4th quarter to draw Maryland within 1 and set up a finish that would never be forgotten.
The game was almost over. And then there was some noise near the timer's table on the side.
Urso has the ball. Urso driving. 10 seconds. Firing the shot. There's a whistle. 6 seconds showing on the clock.
Relax, what's the horn for? What's the horn for?
Very controversial. Richie was upset. We were all upset. With 6 seconds left, Maryland was awarded the ball.
All right, 6 seconds remaining on the clock. Can he do it? Urso. And he passes off to Greg Ruff, and Ruff scores. Ruff is tied it up, the freshman attack man. 12 apiece, and we'll go into overtime. Unbelievable.
So all of a sudden, the air was released from the balloon. It was devastating. And I remember everybody going off, and I was the team captain, everybody trying to get everybody back motivated for the game, but it was a big letdown. And in fact, when we came out in the overtime, Maryland scored the first goal. But the moons were aligned that day for Cornell Lacrosse, and I really believe that it was meant to be.
Working on the clock, and is ticking away the seconds. Here it comes. Oh, John Levine. McInerney going in all alone. He fires over to French. And French scores his 7th goal. He has 4 assists. What a day for Mike French. I can't believe it. And that just clinches it for Cornell.
Frank Giffin's comments were remarkable. His ability to say things about lacrosse over the years has been a big help. Stated to Howard Cosell, the most exciting athletic event I ever covered was the NCAA championship game in Providence, Rhode Island, 1976. Cornell beating Maryland. And it was really beautiful because that was a real kick for lacrosse.
The 77 team had a lot to prove, and everybody thought, you know, going undefeated one year, first time ever, nobody thought we would go undefeated again. Let's go do it again.
Eamon McInerney would lead Cornell's quest to become the first school to win 3 NCAA championships. To do so, the Big Red would have to overcome Johns Hopkins.
Eamon McInerney, who is the quickest attackman I ever saw, was matched up with Mark Greenberg, who's an absolutely great defenseman. Eamon kind of lines up behind the goal, starts to make a move on Greenberg, and Greenberg poke checks the ball out of Eamon's stick. I thought, that guy just made a mistake, because I knew at that point he had gotten Eamon's competitive juices going.
And I went after him again with the same move and scored. And then after that, things kind of started moving in our direction.
Going against the big names, not understanding the pressure that was behind it and what it meant. Yeah, they handed it to us pretty good.
Cornell came out with a vengeance. On offense, McInerney sparked the Big Red attack, while Dan McAsee was flawless in goal. Cornell jumped out to a dominating 9-0 lead.
It was probably the most amazing, quickest point spread I've ever seen.
We pretty much did what we wanted with them that day. We were pretty fortunate. It was a great team, that 77 team.
Once again, the Big Red ruled lacrosse.
For us to win the championship, it was just this incredible ascendancy from nowhere. And for me, it was just magical in that respect.
Cornell has won 16-8. Cornell, the NCAA lacrosse champion.
To understand tradition and pride in college lacrosse, you must see it through the eyes of Johns Hopkins.
When you wear the Hopkins uniform and you walk on the field, you know that your opponent's going to come out with their best game. It's a game that they look down their schedule and they see Hopkins on May 31st or whatever, and they're really keen towards that game.
It is probably the only school that I can think of that lacrosse is the #1 sport. Your homecoming is lacrosse. I mean, if you're really dedicated to playing lacrosse, you go to a school like Johns Hopkins.
Generally, Hopkins is known for 2 things, probably, and that's medicine and medical study and lacrosse.
You're dealing with a lot of tradition and a lot of alumni who expect you to win, and it's a great feeling winning a championship with a Hopkins jersey.
To people in lacrosse, when you say Hopkins, that means something special. And that feels good to know that you played as part of a program that is recognized as the Notre Dame. People go, oh, when you played for Johns Hopkins.
The Hopkins championship legacy began in the early 70s.
The keys were 72 and 73. A group of guys that went through the disappointment of 72 and then the incredible disappointment of 73. And just mentally, we're not going to be denied.
We got together as a team. We had a group of 12 seniors, and we basically got together and said, listen, you know, we've reached the finals twice. You know, let's win it for a change of pace.
Our leaders on the team were seniors who had played in the 2 previous losses, and they just were relentless in their approach.
It was Bob Scott's last year at Hopkins. He had made that announcement ahead of time. The transition had already started. Henry Ciccarone had come in and started working with the team that last year. And it was not something that was said, talked about a great deal, the pressure that, you know, we have to get this one. I think it was just something that's deep down inside everyone felt that they were going to do what they had to do to make it happen.
Our guys really played well, hard and tough, and so I had the opportunity to go out with a win, and that was terrific.
It was just a culmination of a great year, a great career at Hopkins, and I'm glad we could do it for him.
It felt good to be able to send him out in that fashion, that he's the kind of guy who deserves to finish on top, and he did.
Oh, it certainly, made my career end on a positive note, and it was special, and I'd be forever grateful that we went out that way, and so it was a great ending.
Actually, it was only the beginning. In 1977, Hopkins was back in the finals, and while the Jays lost to Cornell, it marked the first of their unprecedented 9 consecutive finals appearances. But in 1978, the Blue Jays and their intense head coach, Henry Ciccarone, not only had an opportunity to avenge their earlier loss to Cornell, but also to stop the Big Reds' amazing 42-game winning streak.
We knew that they were riding high, and I think it was just a matter of us playing relaxed and really didn't have anything to lose.
We could see the difference when we got to the game, even before we stepped on the field, the attitude of Cornell versus our attitude. We were all there for business. There was no games this time.
Johns Hopkins has the ball. He clears upfield. Chris Kane of Cornell hit. He drops it. Mike O'Neill. O'Neill drives. Dodges. Fires. Goal. Hopkins now leads by 4. 11-7. Great play.
They had won 42 in a row. No one's given Hopkins a chance to beat Cornell, and that, I thought that was Ciccarone's coming of age as a coach. His era really began, in my view, after that. That's when his run began.
The following season, Ciccarone's team defended its title, this time against Maryland.
We knew that if we really came out and played our game, that we'd really be able to be all over them. I think they were in the same position that we were in 77, where getting to the championship against Hopkins was just enough for them, more so than winning the championship.
Freshman Jeff Cook made the most of his opportunity, scoring 3 goals to lead Hopkins past the overmatched Terps 15-9.
You win a second one, you go undefeated. You're really king of the hill. There was other teams that had won 2 in a row.
It meant that I only have to go through this one more year to make it 3 in a row.
In search of an unprecedented 3rd consecutive championship, the pressure to win in 1980 was intense.
When I first got there, I wasn't really aware of that pressure. But after being there, I became very much attuned and aware of that pressure, to the point where it wasn't just good enough that you beat a team, you had to annihilate the team.
In the championship game that year, Schneck's burden was intensified when the Blue Jays' leading scorer found his team in sudden death overtime against Virginia.
Brendan Schneck, the highest scorer for Johns Hopkins. The whole season rests on his stick right here.
Henry Ciccarone, he is well versed in his X's and O's, and he knew what they were going to try and do. And the whole play was for me to make it look like I was going to the goal, draw the double team, and then make the second pass.
Brendan Schneck starts in against Kevin O'Shea, looks inside, puts the ball behind, quickly to Bidney.
And it was amazing because the play worked to perfection.
Bidney feeds the crease, has scored a goal! The game is over! Jeff Harris scores the winning goal on a feed from Jim Bidney, and Johns Hopkins are the national champs 3 times in a row. The first time any team has ever done it. 48 seconds showing on the overtime clock, and Johns Hopkins is going wild on the field.
When the play happened and that ball went in the net, it was just total relief. And that was my first championship game, and it was one that I'll always remember. It was a great experience.
The Hopkins class of 1980 had done the unthinkable.
I was so emotionally and physically drained that you just stop and just say, thank God, it's over and we won. But it's nice to be able to go around and say that I played in 4 championships, I won 3, and they were the last 3.
It could be described as a dynasty. It was to win 3 national championships year after year after year is a nice accomplishment, and I'll never forget it.
Although the Blue Jays made it to the title game in the next 3 years, the 1980 championship would prove to be Henry Ciccarone's last.
Chick was a great coach and really could have been the first coach to win 4 championships in a row. But it was a great run for Johns Hopkins Lacrosse. And, you know, when you have that kind of run with that type of program, you expect to be in the championship game. My job was to win national championships. And that's what Hopkins expects. And that's what you expect when you take on the job.
Don Zimmerman took over that job in 1984 and continued the Hopkins tradition by leading the Jays back into the finals against a Syracuse team that had upset them the previous year.
I think they had some revenge on their minds from the year before.
That day, one of Zimmerman's freshman recruits came ready to play.
There goes Brian Wood against Mike O'Donnell. Wood moves in and scores! Brian Wood, the freshman, rewriting the history books right here. Syracuse does not know what hit them. What has hit them is a freshman from Annapolis, Brian Wood, 3 quick goals.
Things just fell into place. I mean, I'm a true believer in a little bit of luck.
Hopkins exploded early and never trailed, successfully keeping its focus on the championship at all times.
I guarantee you that Hopkins is thinking about last year.
I really think we were a great team in 1984. It's got to be one of the better NCAA teams. I mean, undefeated, we were confident. We knew up 6-0, you know, that we weren't going to let this one get away.
A large part of the confident feeling was supplied by the play of its All-American goalie, Larry Quinn.
Winning that national championship initially was a great relief because we felt we should have won the year before. But I think personally, it was great because I didn't play in 82 or 83, and you know, I felt it kind of solidified my position as, you know, one of the top goalies in the game.
For Quinn, however, 84 was only a prelude of things to come.
He was better in 85 than he was in 84, and that's saying something.
He might be the best ever in goal at Johns Hopkins.
In my opinion, he's by far the best goalie I've ever seen or played with.
Just outside the crease, you see that one-on-one matchup. Spins in, save! Larry Quinn is there once again.
I still have nightmares about Larry Quinn today. He was just incredible. The way I've never seen a defensive player really dominate the game like Larry Quinn did.
I mean, Larry Quinn, my favorite goalie of all time.
They had some unbelievable weapons. I mean, they had Brad Kotz, they had Tim Nelson, 2 great plays in NCAA history, and you know, they don't score for 33 minutes.
Syracuse on the move, in front. Save again by Quinn on another low shot. Save by Quinn is even sharp.
That day, the ball looked like a grapefruit to me.
2 quarters without scoring is almost unheard of in this caliber of play.
Someone in the press had asked him, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think that you could hold Syracuse to 3 goals? And he said, yeah, in my wildest dreams, I shut him out. You know, and that was really his whole attitude about the game, his whole attitude in his career.
Stellar goaltending from Larry Quinn. Johns Hopkins back-to-back championships. And the tradition continues in Baltimore.
You know, it was unbelievable. And there was an unbelievable party after that one, I can tell you that.
The party would continue 2 years later in 1987. Only this time, the championship would rest on the bittersweet legacy of assistant coach Fred Smith.
Freddie had cancer, and Freddie was dying, and the team knew it, and you know, we were used to having Freddie out there every practice for so many years, and in '87 he was only able to make a couple practices each week, and as his health was failing, but he was able to muster up enough energy to travel with us up to Rutgers and for the Final Four, and we played Maryland in the semis. And that was his last game. They took him back to Baltimore, and he wasn't able to come back to the championship game.
And we dedicated that next day. We dedicated the game to win the national championship for Coach Smith.
With Smith serving as the inspiration, Johns Hopkins was not going to be denied a 7th championship.
Under 2 minutes, the play is Bouvier. Moves in and shoots and scores! Craig Bouvier gives the Blue Jays an 11-10 lead with 1:51 to play.
We were told, and I remember hearing this after the game,
He listened to the game on his radio in the hospital when he wasn't supposed to be listening to it. He was supposed to be relaxing. And right after we won the national championship, Coach Smith passed away.
You talk about lacrosse and what makes it great. People make it great. It's a great game, but there are also a lot of great people that are involved. And Freddie was the greatest of all.
Willie Scroggs went to Carolina and took a program that was basically a non-program and made it the best in the country. Will's a quiet, soft-spoken fellow, but brother, when he got down there, he was Vince Lombardi.
In just 3 seasons, Willie Scroggs developed the first lacrosse power well south of the Mason-Dixon line, leading the Heels into the '81 championship final.
That whole week prior to the championship, it was, you know, how can Carolina stick with Hopkins? You know, Hopkins is so strong. They're coming off 3 straight national titles.
And we certainly were the underdog. I think all the pressure was on Johns Hopkins. We had nothing to lose. I mean, everyone expected that we would lose. We felt like if we could stay in the game with them, that we had a chance to win it.
Carolina's opportunistic offense kept the game close, but late in the 3rd quarter, Hopkins appeared to be in control.
They were up 11-8, and then I think the 3rd quarter we shut them down. We scored a couple quick goals, just bang goals.
Now rolls in, fired, and North Carolina has tied this game 11-all.
We want to get the next one. When you get one goal, you want to get the next one and score in bunches.
Led by Mike Burnett's 4-goal performance, the Heels staged a determined second-half rally to dethrone the defending champs. Scroggs and North Carolina had joined the ranks of lacrosse elite by claiming the school's first-ever crown.
NCAA Lacrosse Championship, and thousands of people are pouring out onto the field. What a scene! North Carolina, the champs. They've upset Hopkins 14-13.
And I told them, I said, this is something special. Don't expect it'll ever happen again. And then they went out and did it all again the next year.
Now, instead of, you know, us gunning for the top dog, we were the top dog.
We weren't the Cinderella team anymore. A lot of people thought that Hopkins really should have won that game. And here was a chance for them to see if Carolina was for real, and we were.
By the title game of 1982, the Tar Heels were a force to be reckoned with. But to repeat as champions, they would rely heavily on juniors David Wingate and Tom Sears.
In front of his own goal, the ball still loose, the open net, and a goal for North Carolina. It's Wingate again. In front they go, great save by Sears. Ball inside to Wingate, he's got the hat trick already. Sliding it inside. It's just a brilliant save by Sears. 3-on-1 if they hurry. In front they score! It is Wingate again with his 4th goal.
Things fell in place, and we had an opportunity where I was in the right place at the right time. I think I felt I had to step up to the plate a little bit.
Inside they scored, it was Wingate. He's got 5 today.
That day, it just seemed to be his day, and we just rode along on the David Wingate ride.
Sears was even more impressive, limiting Hopkins to a mere 5 goals.
And a save, a big save by Sears.
It was one of those situations where the goalie overshadowed everybody on the field and was principally responsible for a team winning.
North Carolina, the national champions in lacrosse for the 2nd straight year. It is over.
Winning every scrimmage, preseason scrimmage, and every game 2 years in a row. So it's a wonderful accomplishment and something that those kids that were involved in it can never have taken away from them.
1986 was a special year, not only for Carolina, but for lacrosse as well, with the creation of the first ever lacrosse national championship weekend.
Who's going to be on the hot seat today, the sophomore for North.
It was wild because it was the first one, and because, you know, no one in lacrosse ever experienced it before.
We weren't satisfied that year that we were there. We had lived in the shadows of the 81 and 82 team. We had to step out some point and win, or else we would have lived in the past on the accomplishments of the prior teams.
The Tar Heels thrived under the new format, upsetting Hopkins in sudden death overtime in the semifinals.
Great. Here he is. Pass inside. They score. To Miller. And North Carolina has upset Johns Hopkins. Look at the Carolina Tar Heels right there.
Even though we won that game, we still knew there was one more to go. So, I mean, the elation was there, but the fact was that you still had another game, and we weren't satisfied.
2 days later, Carolina's Cardiac Kids were back in the championship game, this time facing ACC rival Virginia. Once again, the Tar Heels displayed a flair for the dramatic on the inaugural Championship Monday.
Pressure there on Rita.
And look at
We thought we had the game won in regulation. We were up by a goal, less than a minute to go. They came up with it. We were a little disorganized. Virginia scored, descended into overtime.
We were somewhat, I guess, calm and cool because, you know, we'd been there before.
We did have an opportunity on a fast break that we didn't convert. It's a sudden death, and we could have won the game there. And next thing you know, the ball goes down the other way.
That's when Gary Seibel etched his name in Chapel Hill legacy.
what a year has he had. What a year way to cap it off. Shoot, scores! It's all over. North Carolina has won the NCAA Lacrosse Championship with 2:10 to go in OT. Gary Seibel, Billy Spraggs, right there, wins his third title.
Oh, it means a great deal to me. I'm very proud of it. You'd like to feel that you had some significant impact, that you've left something behind. I never dreamed, well, maybe I did dream that North Carolina would be as successful as it was, but it was a special time. There is something special about being a head coach, particularly at a school like North Carolina.
After 12 seasons, Scroggs stepped down as Carolina's coach in 1990. New Heels coach Dave Klarman would make an immediate impression against an upstart team in the finals.
State going to the championship, you betcha.
We want to be on top. That's just it. That's bottom line, Towson State. We want to be on top, and we're going to do what we have to do to get up there.
We were very, very excited about playing up at the Dome and being in a national championship. After being so close, you know, the year before and the year before that, we just started off real well. 8 seconds, right? Boom.
First shot in the goal. Dan Donnelly just 8 seconds into the game, and North Carolina's on the board.
We wanted to set the momentum early, tell them that we were in control, and that's exactly what we did.
Here's their star, Dennis Goldstein. Shot in the goal.
There in the championship, you don't give up an opportunity like that.
By himself. Beautiful no look behind the back bounce shot. John Webster, and it's a 5-goal Tar Heel lead. Here comes Carolina right away. They score again. Great play.
It's now 11-4, and the Tar Heels are stomping all over Towson State.
I don't know whether it was Towson State being a little overwhelmed or whether we just played really well, but I mean, we were good, and we were hitting on all cylinders.
The Tar Heels would go on to win their 4th title. No longer considered a remote outpost for championship lacrosse, North Carolina had cemented its place among the sports elite.
What a way to go out in this last game.
Playing in the national championship was the greatest lacrosse experience I ever had, and it's great to be able to share that with your friends and family and teammates all at the same time and win the national championship.
'83 marked Syracuse's arrival in the national spotlight. By reaching the finals for the first time, head coach Roy Simmons Jr. and his Orangemen would leave an indelible mark on championship lacrosse.
Johns Hopkins has been here 6 straight years in a row. This is the first time Syracuse has ever been here at all.
It was the Goliath and David syndrome. Goliath was Hopkins. They are the Yankees of lacrosse.
While Syracuse was in search of its first championship, Johns Hopkins had plans to celebrate its 5th. As the game began, the Jays set out to crush the Orange. It was clear they wanted to spoil any coming out party.
Maybe the fact that it was our first championship, maybe we were a little uptight in the first half and couldn't get things going.
Midway through the 3rd quarter, Hopkins had an apparent insurmountable 7-goal lead.
Everybody was ready to go in the parking lot and start tailgating early.
Well, it's far from over. Syracuse can score in bunches.
You know, we were up 12-5, and I was ready to jump off the bench and tell, you know, one of the coaches, we're going to win this thing.
And Law has a man open, Mike Powers. Takes it behind Powers, comes in wide open. He can shoot left-handed, he's got a good shot. Fire, score! That's a big break for Syracuse. It's only 1 goal, but it's scored by a defenseman, and that's really a big boost.
As I jumped off the bench, Darren Lawler, who was a defensive midfielder for Syracuse, ran down and scored a goal.
I remember vividly the feeling I had when Darren scored the goal, and it was like, all right, we got to rush. We got the adrenaline going, and our team plays best on adrenaline.
And from that on, just the floodgates opened.
Led by Brad Cott, Syracuse began an incredible roll and wound up scoring 8 straight goals.
A beautiful unassisted dodging goal by number 30, Brad Cox. And Syracuse is not going to play dead.
Lift up in the air, still no control. Picked off by Art Lux. Lux looks inside, he's got an open man on the crease. Feed it
One back, ball, the great save, a rebound, the shot. Well, that's the kind of stick handling that Syracuse is used to doing. The fans for Syracuse are going wild now. They're on their feet, and that's the impetus that Syracuse needs to come back. This is unbelievable, and Mr. Moe is certainly on the side of Syracuse right now.
Ball back behind.
Get up, Mickey! Get up!
Inside roll, wants to shoot, backside, a man open. He scored!
Fourth goal for number 30, Brad Cox.
For the first time in this game, the Orangemen of Syracuse have the lead. Syracuse 14, Johns Hopkins 13.
That game, a lot happened in that game. Some strange things that you may never see happen again.
There was an unbelievable moment when they got back and tied it. There was a face-off, and there was a mad scramble at midfield, and Brad Cox and Henry Ciccarone Jr. were going for the ball. Ciccarone got banged by somebody, and his shoe fell off. And he stopped going for the ball, and he turned around to look at the ref. I mean, he was complaining, and while he was doing that, Cox picked up the ball, went in and scored the go-ahead goal, and Hopkins never caught up.
Hopkins was thinking there was going to be a whistle by the official for the shoe. There was no call, and they relaxed.
Its miraculous comeback now complete. The Syracuse era of domination was underway.
I really remember thinking that that was the moment lacrosse came of age as a big-time NCAA playoff sport.
And I think that sort of opened a new era for us in the NCAAs, that the excitement of the game, the opportunity for comebacks against the big guys, so to speak, and then now Syracuse is the big guy in the block themselves.
For Syracuse, however, the excitement was just beginning. Starting in 1988, the Orange were to begin one of the great title runs in lacrosse history, led by the legendary Gate brothers, Gary and Paul.
Here's Gary Gate. Here he comes, and he shoots and scores. What a great play by Gate. Gate has his shot. Here it comes. Score. Paul Gate.
Somebody likened him to having Michael Jordan and his brother on the same team.
McCormick bodies Gate. Gate beats him, shoots and scores, and Gary Gate has scored 70 goals in a season. He becomes the first player to ever score 70 in a lacrosse season.
Roy says, yeah, do what you want to do. That's beautiful. He's an artist. And the Gates were painting the game of lacrosse with a airbrush.
Picasso couldn't have done it any better.
Now to Gary Gate behind. Canaris stuffed it in. Tremendous goal. Gary Gate leaped over the cage and stuffed it in. He stuffed it in from behind the cage.
Oh, we saw this in the warm-ups. He's been working on this all week.
I never dreamed I'd do it in a game. You know, I practiced it a couple times. I think I remember the week before the championship doing it in a man-up play. And I think Coach Desko just turned around and shook his head. And so I thought, well, I better not try this. And it was just a spur-of-the-moment type thing. Saw the opportunity, I guess, and reacted to it. I got lucky.
Later that afternoon, Air Gate went airborne again.
Gate again. Did he get it in? Yes, he did. Gary Gate has done it again.
Did it again. That's right. And nobody else has ever done it.
He is becoming the Michael Jordan of lacrosse, going through the air and dunking it in from behind.
When I look back on that Penn game, you know, the Air Gate shot, you know, that's just something that happened. But no question, the play that I'm reminded most of is Paul scoring with 3 seconds left.
Now they'll have to ad-lib something as the clock winds down. Here's Paul Gate shooting. He scores with 3 seconds left. Paul Gate scores. And the Orangemen of Syracuse have taken an 11-10 lead over the Penn Quakers as the kid from British Columbia fired it by Canaris, and Syracuse is on its way to the national finals.
Paul put in the winner with 3 seconds to go, which ultimately put us in the winning or the championship game on Monday against Cornell, which we won far more handily than we got out of the game on Saturday with Penn.
Having lost the previous year to Cornell in the semifinals, Gary helped Syracuse get revenge, this time with a decisive victory in the Carrier Dome.
Gary and Paul said to me after the ball game, we didn't realize, Coach, what this really means, because we're Canadian, and this is your nation, your national championship. But we now see the magnitude of it. We understand the importance of it. We're never going to lose another national title for you while we're in school.
And the following season, the Gates would make good on their promise.
And here come the Syracuse Orangemen. Gate, the shot and score. Paul Gate
They would, however, get help from another Canadian import, Tom Maricek.
There was a little pressure. You know, I was a freshman, obviously, walking into a great team that, you know, basically didn't really need too much fixing.
The challenge to repeat was capped off by an intense matchup between Gary Gait and Johns Hopkins All-America defenseman Dave Petramala.
It's the best versus the best. And in the championship game in 1989, you know, Petramala, I thought, played Gary Gait as well as he can be played.
The best against the best. Petramala knocks it away from Gary Gait.
We had one player that could stop one of the Gates, but it was hard to find a guy that could stop the other one.
And now Syracuse has it. This is Gait. This is Gary Gait. In transition, that's where he likes to be. This is Paul Gait coming down the slot to score for Paul Gait. Reza Pollock stood there, couldn't do anything about it.
Paul scored from about 15 yards on me on a shot that I didn't see.
But the Blue Jays battled throughout, refusing to give an inch in a seesaw game destined for a memorable finish.
Johns Hopkins, 10-9 leaders right now. We're tied at 11.
Canadians will kill you, and that's all finishers. And there's
Zafferty! Zafferty with a shot and a goal, and Syracuse got the lead.
the game comes down to the last minute. Syracuse has the lead. They have the ball out of bounds at the midfield line. What you don't want to do is go one-on-one in the middle of the field against Petramala.
Everyone knew that Gary Gait was going to get the ball, and everyone knew that Dave Petramala was going to cover him.
They really do. They want to put it in the hands of the Gates, and it's Gates against Petramala. That's your best matchup.
Petramala, he strips him of the ball, but Gait.
Ball went on the ground. We were able to get it and call timeout and get a last shot.
Johns Hopkins tries to send us into overtime, and this is Panetta.
Watch for Wilkins to take the shot.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. The shot, the save, and Syracuse is the national champion for the second year in a row.
The play worked as well as we could have designed it. The only problem was Matt Palin was in the goal, and he made a wonderful save, and you know, that's why he was the MVP of the game.
You know, we came out on top, and you know, I'm sure Dave would have let me have 5 or 6 goals, you know, if they could have walked away with the championship that day.
The Gates would complete their fantastic run at Syracuse by leading the Orange to yet another championship, the school's 3rd consecutive and 4th overall. The 1990 Syracuse Orangemen won their 3 tournament games by an average of 10 goals a game, and just might have been the greatest team of all time.
No doubt, which was the greatest team in the country. And when that game ended, and it was the end of the road for the Gates, we said that may be the greatest team of all time. It certainly is the greatest in recent years.
We three-peated the 3rd national title without a great struggle. And it also was the swan song for many great All-Americans, Gary and Paul included.
And we always worked hard every day, you know, to go out there to prove that we were better than every team in the country. And I think that throughout my career at Syracuse, you know, that was always our mindset every day of practice.
And we also thought this is going to be the end of this great run for Syracuse, because the Gates have lifted Syracuse to another level. It wasn't the end.
We wanted to keep Syracuse where they were, up with Hopkins and, you know, the other teams that have been down it.
With the departure of the Gates, people expected Syracuse's championship tradition to end. But 3 years later, it would continue in dramatic fashion.
Boy, what a game. What a game. Carolina with an opportunity to win it in regulation.
Midas is bringing it in. This is not their first midfield.
Stolen by Beardsley.
Rick Beardsley seemed like he had kind of baited the midfielder to throw the ball, making it look like his attackman was open. And then just when the ball was in the air, pounced on it.
The ball is loose. Ground ball controlled by Syracuse. Reggie Thorpe passes ahead.
James Brown says, watch the hit.
Watch the hit. What a pass by Schmidt. He's got Ryder.
Right there, you just knew this wasn't going to be a missed shot by Matt Ryder. He was going to finish that shot.
Ahead to Matt Ryder. And Ryder shoots and scores! Syracuse ahead, 13-12. The number 3 seed, Syracuse, upends number 1, North Carolina, for the national title.
It came up big in the last 8 seconds of the ball game. That's what sports are about. That's what NCAA lacrosse is about. And that's why the crowds are building, and that's why the game is growing.
It's funny because everybody else thinks that we're rebuilding, and like Coach Simmons says, we don't rebuild, we reload.
'95 was Syracuse's 13th consecutive national semifinal appearance. And the tournament's silver anniversary edition promised to be lacrosse at its best.
Have that, CJ.
Penalty against Hopkins. Could be a goal. It is. One more.
And so the 25th championship game would come down to a Maryland and Syracuse showdown in front of a national championship game record crowd of over 26,000 people at Byrd Stadium.
I walked out and I just looked up. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, the whole horseshoe was just packed. Didn't look like there was a seat open. And you know, I got the butterflies in my stomach, and I got the goosebumps and the sweaty palms. It was just unbelievable.
Rose going into a rotation to start that heavy right-handed shot, and they get first blood.
It was in their home, it was in their backyard, and they came out running, they scored the first goal. You know, it seemed like, you know, everything was going to go their way.
But in typical style, this Syracuse offense was quick and explosive.
Goal. Shot by Cavalier, who comes around and just beats Dougherty. We've got a 1-1 game.
And then we just kind of opened the floodgates on them.
Got him up top. He's going to want to have the left-hander shoot. But there's a right-handed shot and a goal.
Syracuse was well on its way to another NCAA title, its 6th in 13 years. The Orange had reestablished themselves as the team to beat in the 90s.
Put this in a little bit of perspective. They are to lacrosse what Lombardi's Packers were in the 60s, what the Yankees were to baseball, and what the Celtics have been to basketball.
We've had some really great players come out of Syracuse, and then some of the players that we have coming up in the next few years. I don't think the tradition's ever going to stop.
And it's players like goalie Alex Rozier who have kept the Syracuse dynasty alive.
When I first started playing there, I was always kind of in the shadow of, say, Chris Saran, Matty Palin, those guys, and it's something that you want to continue. You wanted to keep that tradition going. You know, every kid dreams of playing for, you know, Syracuse Orangemen, and I mean, I guess I fulfilled the dream and won the national championship.
Syracuse wins the 95 championship, their 6th national title.
I think the tradition will continue.